Welcome to the Direct Farm Podcast, the weekly listen for farms selling direct. We'll talk about the 4 levers for farm success, which are quality, brand, price, and convenience. We'll hear from outside industry experts and producers like you to delight your customers, to save time, and to increase your direct farm sales and business. We're glad you're here.
Welcome to the Direct Farm Podcast. We've got a great conversation for you today with one of the most influential organizations in the country when it comes to pastured proteins. Today we're excited to welcome Mike Badger, the president of the American Pastured Poultry Producers Association, or APPPA for short. Mike, welcome. To get things started, tell us about the origins of APPPA, the founder, when it started.
Yeah, thanks, Alyssa, for having me on. So APPPA started in 1997 with a bunch of pastured poultry farmers. It was a fairly young movement at that time, just as a way to connect, get networked, and share ideas. We didn't have a strong internet presence back then. It was there, but not quite like we experienced it in 2020. And so the organization really set out to build relationships with farmers all across the country who are exploring this model. And the founder, the lead founder, was Joel Salatin in 97, because he had written his early writings on pastured poultry in the early 90s, and he started getting a following. People started picking up on what he was writing about, and it sounded great and it was appealing. And really what people were doing was opting out of the conventional farming model, and consumers were opting out of the conventional chicken model, if you will. They were looking for something different, and that's what pastured poultry offered. And that's where it started. We started with a grant of the Heifer project in Arkansas was involved with getting us started, and we just took off from there.
Since its founding, how has APPPA evolved over the years from more of a regional organization to a national influencer with respect to pastured poultry?
Yeah, so it's interesting that we've always been pastured poultry focused, like very niche. That's the one thing that we've started focusing on, and that's the one thing that we focus on today. And it was always a national presence when the group started. And one of the challenges that we had early on was just simply getting information. Sharing information was important, and meeting people who were doing this was important. So started really as a networking and clearinghouse, a networking group and a clearinghouse of those ideas and processes and thoughts to help the model grow, help farmers grow. And today, one of the things that has changed is the internet has made information cheap. It's very easy to find. One of the challenges with that is that the information you find isn't always good and sometimes conflicting. So what we have evolved into is we still provide a lot of technical details about how to raise pastured poultry. We focus on making farmers literate in the model so they can make decisions and really recognize pastured poultry for the business that it is. And when we do trainings and programmings, there's a real strong business component to it, which a lot of times involves math and numbers and things like that. But it's also that decision-making process. And we're still very much a networking association, and putting people together and connecting people remains a very strong mission.
Can you tell us about your members? Are these members hobby farmers with a small flock, or are they more large commercial operations as well?
Yeah, so when you look out into the world, you'll see a lot of people that are raising pasture-raised chickens and eggs and things like that. A lot of times they're just doing it for their family. So they're doing it on that small scale, maybe for the family, just to feed the family and a couple friends. That's not really our core audience. When we go out for membership, and people come to us, I should say, they're the people who are already doing pastured poultry who think this is a business, whether that's a business alongside maybe something else on their farm, or whether it's a primary enterprise. So that's really the key to differentiation from an APPPA member versus, what you might encounter elsewhere out there is we are looking for people who are treating this as a business. And that really narrows the pool down. And flock size runs the gamut. We have farms who run a couple 100,000 broilers a year, all the way down to maybe 1,000 or 500 on the really small scale. It all depends on how it fits on their farm. There's a big goal setting piece of this. There's how does what you're wanting to do fit into your farm? And that kind of drives the how big am I.
And I expect that you probably talk to your members quite a bit and perhaps survey them on occasion too. What can you share about the most beneficial aspects of APPPA membership?
Yeah, hands down, I think it's the people, just connecting people, giving people a place that allows them to connect and share information and help each other. So that's the biggest benefit. And whether we're doing our conference or whether we're doing our ongoing member discussion, we have a private email group or forum. And I like to tell people that it's one of the situations where members pay to help you, because that's kind of what it's all about. It's a transparency thing. There's just the camaraderie and the connections you build in that closed ecosystem is really important, because you can go out on the web and find a lot of places to connect with other people raising pastured poultry. There's a lot of power in a $50 or $60 filter, which is our membership fee. And that kind of cuts the cream, so to speak. And in terms of what we offer, the discussion group that we offer is very vital. That's the ongoing connection with most of our members. We publish a bi-monthly newsletter, which is more of our general information, like technical resources, association updates, research, those kind of things that producers would find of interest, not necessarily of need right then. And then our signature event, I think, is the conference that we host in January.
How would you describe the conversation amongst APPPA members over 2020? How has the pandemic affected your members?
I think the conversations are all along the same vein as like, what in the world has happened and when will it end? And in amongst those broad topics, there's just people trying to sort out what it means. What's the next step? I think the pandemic has lasted a lot longer, and the impact has lasted a lot longer than most people were planning for or expecting back in March of 2020. So how has it affected members? It's unevenly, that's for sure. The hardest hit were our members and producers who really focused on restaurants, and a lot of our folks do, and it just depends on how much of your marketing mix was in one channel or another. But generally speaking, if you were servicing restaurants and chefs and that kind of, even other wholesale markets, you really pandemic took a bite out of your business. You shredded your sales. And I've heard people say as little as 10% of their wholesale market remained through the summer kind of thing, which is tough. If you were in the direct market sales, direct to consumers, whatever that looked like, whether it was farmers markets or deliveries or shipping or something like that, you enjoyed a strong growth, and many times an exponential growth, or not necessarily exponential, but a 3x, 4x, 2x over what you were the year before. And that has moderated a little bit as we came through the end of 2021, but generally I'm hearing it from everybody that they're up. That channel is up, it's strong, and the people who were in wholesale markets were working very hard through 2020 to pivot and get back into those direct channels and have a direct connection to their customers. And it's interesting, the pandemic sped up a lot of stuff. One of the things that sped up was that change, because we were hearing last year in our conference in Jacksonville, it would have been the 2020 conference, that our bigger farms who are doing primarily wholesale were pivoting back and making that transition back to the direct-to-consumer model with more earnest than they were before for other market influences. But I think the pandemic forced a lot of people to pivot. And the fortunate thing for a lot of our farms is they're small enough that they can pivot. It's not necessarily easy, but they have a chance, right? They have hope, when like maybe a large integrator who has to shut down an entire processing plant and euthanize birds because they can't retool their facility. So our folks have at least a chance.
What have you found to be the most effective tactics for APPPA members transitioning their business in 2020? Maybe you just want to dive a little deeper into that.
Yeah, so that's a little tougher. What I think we've seen just from a sales model is we've seen there's already a trend towards like delivery and frozen food to your doorstep kind of thing through UPS or FedEx or something like that. I think the pandemic has accelerated that and made customers more comfortable getting food in that way, the Amazon model, if you will, or even meeting somebody at a drop point once a week in town to get a pickup because there's a convenience factor. And this business has really never been about selling chicken or eggs or turkey or anything like that. It's always been about the relationships that you can build with your customers. And I think in 2020, when you go through a pandemic like that, there's a chance there for that relationship to grow stronger, to blossom. And that's really the key to it all, is just maintaining that relationship. And it can be hard when you're stressed out and you're trying to figure out how to add more capacity because everybody just bought out your whole year's worth of inventory in a single week, which is some of the stories you hear, obviously. I'm sure you've heard them too, is from at Barn to Door. That's the kind of stuff that happened.
So as many APPPA members are probably coming off a large holiday push and they're looking ahead to the new year, they're looking ahead to 2021. What is the advice you are giving your members in terms of planning ahead and looking to the coming new year?
Yeah, I think right now the people are just trying to figure out how to plan. What is 2021 going to look like? And if there's one piece of advice that the hindsight is always wonderful, we have, just like the rest of humanity, right? We have different personalities in our group. And some people, by the time January 1st hits, will have their entire production season mapped out. Other people will order their first batch of chicks 3 weeks before they need them. And a lot of times that has worked. In 2020, that didn't work. If that was you in 2020, you got hosed because then you couldn't get the stuff you needed. So planning is definitely, I think, is a lesson learned for a lot of people in 2020. Following that closely is going to be things like how much risk are you willing to take on here, and not knowing necessarily how long demand may be elevated. How well did you keep up with your new customers? Were you able to retain a group of your customers? And so I think some of the other advice was that as we were going through 2020, started really thinking about the people who were running out of inventory, running high demand, and just making sure that they take care of their customers who were loyal customers before the pandemic showed up, and just, again, providing that relationship to them and realizing that relationship is probably worth preserving, and it's probably worth maybe turning away a new customer so you can be loyal to somebody who supported you for the last year, 5 years, or whatever the case may be. And then of the new people you get, how can you retain them? And I think that's a harder question as we go into 2021. I know there might be some things you can do from a marketing perspective, but really just how can you service those customers and keep a percentage of them coming back when life goes back to normal, if you will.
Definitely. And speaking of pivoting and being able to pivot to and change kind of the business operations based on the current climate we're in, last year, Barn to Door was pleased to sponsor and attend the APPPA Conference in Florida in January of 2020. Can't believe that's almost a year ago. In 2021, however, the APPPA Conference is going to be virtual. So maybe you could tell us a little bit more about the upcoming virtual conference. What are your goals for this event, knowing that it's in a different format than in past years?
Yeah, so it's crazy because our conference will be entering the 5th year that we've been holding it. And in years 1 through 4, I marketed pretty heavily against the idea of living your pastured poultry business online. Really marketed the need to be in person, right? There's just no better way to learn and devote time to your business than to be focused, and being in person really does that. So we're not going to be in person, obviously. So this year we have to figure out how to do that virtually. And we're going to try our best to replicate what we do in person, which really are the signature part of our conferences is the peer-to-peer discussion. So last year, for example, 2020, we went into the conference, the opening day of our conference, with about 1/3 of our programming slots filled. We had some pre-conference courses, but then our main conference, only 1/3 of our track was filled out. And the rest of it happened on the first morning of the conference. So based on what our attendees wanted to talk about and vote on, and then we broke people up from there. And that's the model that we work on. We're going to try to replicate that virtually. I think we can do it. Zoom has some features that will enable us. Our event platform has some features to streamline that a little bit. So that's still the goal. And one of the big goals when we started this, the conference, was just simply to provide programming around pastured poultry that just wasn't available anywhere else. And one of those concepts is for our experienced producers, the farmers who are 5 years, maybe plus of experience, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. When they go to a typical winter conference, the programming is not up to their speed. It's not what they need. All their time is spent in the hallway talking to the other people like them. And we wanted to replicate that hallway time, which is the format of our conference. And that means we treat those attendees more, we focus more on a lot of business concepts and a lot of just vision type of things, and really pushing the envelope. And to make sure we get a good mix of people, we bring in some introductory programming in the first couple of days of the conference. That's our presentations. That's where we break out the PowerPoints and we have somebody stand up there and talk and go through slides and present something. And then our main conferences mixes everybody, but it elevates the conversation and the level to a more intermediate, at least, and more advanced type of topic. And we still make some room in those breakout sessions for well-rounded discussions about how to raise a chicken, but that's not our focus. And we believe very strongly that the best way to learn about anything pastured poultry is to be in the room with those couple hundred people who will be at that conference, because they are the people who make the effort to be there, who have done it. They're invested, and they're invested in themselves and in the community. And that's really what we are striving for when we think about what APPPA is and what we're doing. So the one thing that I would say virtually gives us the advantage is it brings down the barrier to entry significantly. We're going to run a very inexpensive registration, and there's going to be no travel costs. There's going to be no food cost. You just have to block out a couple of hours on your schedule for a couple of days, and you can experience virtually. And I'm hopeful that experience will lead people to say, hey, I'm going to make this a priority in 2022, and I'm going to come meet these people in person.
Definitely. And I think people are looking for that connection, especially right now. But networking, just going back to how important it is to build those connections, and especially in the industry and with farming, for farmers to connect. So other than being virtual, what else is going to be new or different about the 2021 APPPA conference?
Yeah, that's a hard one, because we've intentionally tried to keep it simple in our programming. One of the neat things we do, like I mentioned, the pre-conference courses. We do run courses. Like we're going to do an introductory course this year to pastured poultry, like we have every other year, which is just like a 101 type of husbandry and management course. But we also started focusing on heritage breeding, like poultry breeders, in this last year. And so we're going to have a track dedicated to them for the first time, and really have a couple opportunities for breeders and growers to maybe connect and form some relationships and see where that can go into the future. So that'll be pretty exciting. And I think one of the big opportunities we have with the conference, one of the new opportunities, is the ability to run probably what's going to be a mixed format conference in years coming, a mixture of online and a mixture of in person, and even leveraging some technology for our in-person people. And I think that's what we're going to take this year to figure out and get good at. Hopefully by the time we're done with our conference, we'll be good at it. But usually that comes from oh my goodness, we got to fix that now. It's wrong. Kind of technology problems. But I think it's a turning point for the way we're going to do our events. And I think that's a scary but exciting opportunity as well.
Mike, just last question. Where should folks go to register for the upcoming APPPA conference? And if you could also share some details about it and how much it will cost, the registration process.
Yep, sure thing. So you can register at appa.org/conference. And registration will be $99 per person. That will include the recordings. And our format, talked about a couple of times, will be a combination of the presentations and the breakout sessions in a run over 4 days. So we'll do January 15th and 16th as our pre-conference, quote unquote, days, our courses, our presentations. And then on the 18th and 19th will be our main conference where we do the more free-form discussions. And we'll look at, and some of those things won't actually be decided until we get our attendees assembled and go through some process of figuring out what's on people's minds. Yeah. And so that's the exciting part. And the one thing I can say is our agenda, we will probably have a pretty complete agenda, as complete as it will get by the first of the year. But people don't necessarily sign up for this conference because of the agenda, if that makes sense. They sign up, like I said, because of the experience and the people they get to associate with.
For sure. And is there anything else that you want to share about APPPA, the upcoming conference, anything else top of mind for you?
No, I think APPPA, like as I mentioned, as I stressed, I can't underscore this enough. We're just really about helping farmers succeed with their pastured poultry, and it starts with the people and it flows down to the details, the knowledge. And we're a lean group, but we try to swing above our belts, so to speak. We try to really think about what you need and program around that and just about everything that we do.
Definitely. Mike, I just want to extend my thanks to you and the entire membership at APPPA. Here at Barn to Door, we're delighted to serve many APPPA farmers all across the country who promote humanely raised pastured poultry. And we encourage you to join Mike and the Barn to Door team at the upcoming APPPA Conference on January 15th to the 16th and the 18th to the 19th, as Mike mentioned, this coming new year. As shared, you can go to apppa.org/conference.com to register online today. And when does that registration process close, Mike?
We'll take registrations at least until the 15th. Because we are recording, we'll probably see if we can figure out a way to take registrations through the 19th. There years past, we've had deadlines and tiers and things like that. This year, like I said, a little simpler. $99, whether you're a member or not. And we'll run it all the way up to the conference.